The list of NBA greats that have lost their careers to injuries is endless. It's an unfortunate part of the game for players and fans that have to see their favorites go down and having to miss games because of it. And sadly, that's something that just keeps happening to these 10 players, who would be considered some of the most fragile players in NBA history, and for some reason they just can't stay injury-free for more than a season. And Jonathan Isaac really comes to mind. As a young 23-year-old 6'10" power forward, the man was thought to be the next Giannis Antetokounmpo. In 2020, he was being considered a real contender for the Defensive Player of the Year award, even though he was on the Orlando Magic, who weren't winning games. The future was extremely bright for Jonathan Isaac, but now he's played 3 games in the past 3 years. On January 1st, 2020, he suffered a left knee injury that was supposed to take him out for 8 to 10 weeks. Well, right when it was time for him to make a comeback, the NBA shut down.
NBA is suspending the season.
So instead, he returned in the bubble and played 2 entire games before blowing out that same knee and tearing his ACL. And that was August 2nd of 2020. The average recovery time for a torn ACL is about 9 months. Well, he's a year and a half past that, so he definitely should have been back by now, and it's just getting weird that he's not and that nothing's been heard from him or the Orlando Magic as to why he's not back on an NBA floor. The only update we have had is, you guessed it, another injury. But even that was 9 months ago. Jonathan Isaac's NBA career looked really promising at first, but all I know is that if he doesn't make a return at some point during this year, I think I'll be convinced that his career is over. But first, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, NordPass, which is a great tool that will store all your passwords in one place for you, as well as securely storing all your credit card and personal details to make shopping, browsing, and signing in easier. You see, I could have really used NordPass about a month ago when my email actually got hacked for real. It was a huge headache to have to change every single password they had access to. But if I would have used their help at generating secure passwords, it probably would have kept my account safe. They even have a tool to check your password health and see how strong it is if you want to create your own. And had I been using it, my information would have never gotten stolen. Now, I get that having basically all your info in one place may sound scary, but NordPass is a zero-knowledge password manager, meaning no one else but you can see what's in your NordPass vault. Not even the NordPass team can access any of your information. And I know the more I talk, the more you're wondering how to get started. So just click my link in the description to go to nordpass.com/AustinSweat or use code AustinSweat at checkout to get 1 month free. The convenience and security that NordPass brings to the table can't be beat. So again, that's nordpass.com/AustinSweat or use promo code AustinSweat to get this great deal now. Shout out to them for the sponsor. Now back to the video. Derrick Rose is another player whose career almost ended due to his injuries. In his first 3 seasons, he played in 240 out of the 246 total games and became an MVP of the NBA at only 22 years old.
You are the youngest MVP in NBA history.
But even quicker than he rose up, he came crashing down. Because the next year he would miss 27 games in the regular season and suffer the first major injury of his career in the playoffs.
Oh, Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee. Holding on to his knee and down.
Something that would change his career forever, because from then on out, it seemed like every single year he would be taken down with another major injury. Just to put it into perspective, in his first 3 years, he played in 97.5% of the games he was eligible for. And in the past 10, he's played in 49% of them, with all of them having to do with his knees and ankles. Ever since that first big injury, the rest of his body has just broken down and never been able to get back to what it once was. I mean, even in recent years, it seemed like he had adjusted his style of play, toned down the dunking and driving to the hoop in order to stay healthy, but that hasn't helped at all. And even last year, he just signed a $43 million deal for the Knicks and was supposed to be a big piece for them, but only played 26 games due to an ankle injury and a skin infection. And it's been a real shame to see. The same could also be said for Joel Embiid, who's definitely a top tier contender for the most fragile player in the NBA. No matter how good the 76ers are, I'll never have them as championship contenders or favorites, because you can pretty much always count on Embiid to get injured at some point during the year. But that's right now. Let's take things back a little bit, because this is the guy that had to miss his first 2 entire seasons due to an injured foot, and since then has never even played 70 games in a year. As a matter of fact, he's only played 52% of all games he's been eligible for since being drafted due to getting hurt. He was even looking like a favorite to win MVP in 2021, but injuries took him out for a good part of the year and he fell out of those talks quick. And with Embiid, it's not like he has bad knees or bad ankles like some other players that have career-ending nagging injuries. No, Embiid will have an injured foot one game, then an injured right shoulder the next. I mean, look at this past postseason. It was supposed to be a big one for Philly, but in it, Joel had to fight off a mild concussion and ended up needing surgery on his right thumb and left index finger. Like, I've never heard of a player hurting 2 separate fingers in a single playoffs. So So yeah, that was just in a span of 2 months. But this is pretty much how a lot of his career has gone. Thankfully, he hasn't had any major injuries, but instead a ton of smaller ones that have always come one after another. Blake Griffin, on the other hand, well, his career had early signs of what was to come for him, because as a rookie, he injured his knee, putting him out for the entire year. After that, he stayed healthy for a really good stretch and rarely ever missed a game for the next 5 years. But ever since 2015, he's only really had a single game where he stayed injury-free. Besides that, it's always been something, whether it was a quad injury in the playoffs, a minor surgery on that same knee, missing the entire playoffs for a hurt toe, or countless more knee injuries. It was always something on the Clippers and Pistons. And it was 2019 when everything took a turn for the worse, when he had to have back-to-back surgeries on that same left knee from his rookie season, taking him out for the entire playoffs and regular season, which was so bad for him it caused the Pistons to buy out his contract and pretty much instantly turned him to a bench player. Kristaps Porzingis is another guy that seems like he can never just stay healthy, and that's always going to be an issue with a player his size. Now, he came into the league and his first 2.5 years went great. He rarely missed any games and slowly got better every year. But it was that third season that he got chosen to become an all-star, but also tore his ACL, which took him out for an entire season and a half. And ever since then, it seems like he's been hurt every single year. In 2019, he tore his meniscus in the playoff series against the Clippers, pretty much costing the Mavs that one. He sat out nearly half the season the next year just to be sure he didn't get re-injured, and only played 50 games this past year. As of right now in the 2023 season, he's managed to stay injury-free, but we'll see what happens. On the other hand, Chris Paul is about an average-sized dude, but he's had a ton of nagging injuries throughout his career. Every season, he has a few, if not more, injuries that take him out for a stretch of games. It's safe to say that he's way more injury-prone than your average star point guard, but it's also not even that. It's the fact that he's gotten hurt way too many times when it's mattered most. In 2015, it was the second round and the Clippers were looking great, but then Chris suffers a hamstring injury and is out for the playoffs while the Clippers were eliminated in Game 7. In 2016, he broke his hand as soon as the playoffs started, which obviously gave LA an easy exit. In 2018, the Rockets had the KD Golden State Warriors on the ropes until Chris had a hamstring injury that put him out for the last 2 games and caused the Rockets to lose in a Game 7 as well. And even on the Suns in 2021, he went through the whole playoffs with an injured wrist. Then this past year, CP3 injured his shoulder so bad he couldn't even shoot the ball. So he's a pretty fragile player, especially when the playoffs come around. Now, Kevin Love's also always been pretty injury prone, but usually due to smaller nagging injuries that wouldn't always take him out for extended periods of time. He did have a hand injury early on that kept him out for mostly all of the 2012 season, but besides that, it was things like concussions, a broken toe, or a broken finger, which have all caused him to play in 60 games or under in 8 out of his 14 seasons. But more specifically, it's been his Cavs run in these past few years especially that his injuries have really become an issue. In 2018, he only played 22 games due to an injured foot, and in 2020, only 25 games due to an injured calf. He got a concussion in the 2015 NBA Finals and missed games, then couldn't play like himself when he came back because of it. But the Cavs still won that year, so luckily his injuries didn't get too much in the way. Yusuf Nurkic is a guy that probably wouldn't get mentioned a ton by your average NBA fan, but look at the amount of games he's played every single season. In his entire career, he's only really had 2 good years. Besides that, he's just constantly getting hurt. And this is the guy the Blazers just gave $70 million to this year, which is shocking considering how many games he's missed for them. Some players' bodies just aren't meant to last in the league, because I mean, even when he had a much more limited role coming off the bench, he was still getting injured just as much as he does as a full-time starter. So it wasn't from any major wear and tear on his body. It was obviously just because some players' bodies are more fragile than others. Ben Simmons is another guy that definitely looks like he's shaping up to be one of the league's most fragile players. He missed his official rookie season due to an injured foot that required surgery, and that's fine, it happens. But fast forward to him holding out all season due to mental health issues. And if he had outside mental health issues, sure, that's fine. But for all the reports that come out of his feelings getting hurt by things players said, and him losing confidence over certain spots in games, while also just not at all having the confidence to shoot the ball, shows that he doesn't have the right mental toughness to excel. Then you combine that with the back surgery he needed, and it now seeming like he's missing every other game due to an injury coming up, and it's all just becoming too much. It seems like every time I go to watch a Nets game, he's sitting out for something. So if he continues on the trend he's been on the past 2 seasons, he'll definitely be one of the most fragile in the entire league. But he definitely won't take that spot because that will probably always go to Anthony Davis as long as he's playing in the league. When you think of injuries today and people with lost potential because of it, he's probably the #1 guy that you think of, and they followed him his entire career. Throughout his short 11 years since getting drafted, he's had 52 different injuries that have cost him to miss games. And he's another guy that's played in every single season. He's never had any major injury that caused him to miss an extended period of time. But it seems as if every single game he's in, we see one of these. and then he'll either get up or not. But if you're watching him play, there's a good chance he gets hurt doing something and at least takes a while to get up. It wasn't a super big deal while he was on the Pelicans because, well, they were the Pelicans, and whether he missed a few games here and there didn't really change the outcome of their season. But on the Lakers, well, it was no surprise that the one season that he was actually able to stay healthy for, his team won a championship. And I don't think that's a coincidence. If you enjoyed, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out.